Singh now wants a Sarbat Khalsa, a congregation of the Sikh community on Baisakhi. Is he modelling himself on the lines of Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale? The question remains, will Punjab permit its fingers or the state to be burnt once again? Why are the police still empty-handed after 14 days? We'll also get to the latest in the Ram Navami violence and the investigations that are taking place. I'm Gaurav Sawant. As always, let's get started with the headlines on India First. Howrah in Bengal remains on the edge a day after Ram Navami clashes erupted. Stone pelting reported for the second straight day. India Today crew targeted by the mob. Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee accuses the BJP of fanning communal fire, says Ram Navami violence was planned by the BJP. The BJP demands a CBI inquiry into the clashes and blames Mamata Banerjee for vote bank politics and appeasement. No relief for former Delhi Deputy Chief Minister. No bail for Manish Sisodia in the CBI Liquorgate case. Former US President Donald Trump indicted for paying hush money to a porn star, Stormy Daniels. Trump becomes the first former US president to face criminal charges. News just coming in, there are reports of violence and arson being reported in Nalanda in Bihar. Nalanda once upon a time was a seat of learning, and now violence and arson is being reported. 3 people have been injured, and this violence is also being reported from Bihar Sharif. Ram Navami procession has been targeted. What we are now being told is after these instances of violence, Section 144 has been clamped in Nalanda after Sasaram. Section 144 prevents congregation of more than 4 people in any one area. Additional police forces have also now been deployed to ensure the situation does not spiral out of control. But take a look at the bigger picture. In the past 24 hours, Sri Ram Navami processions have been targeted in Vadodara in Gujarat, Sambhaji Nagar in Maharashtra, Howrah in Bengal, then Sasaram and Nalanda in Bihar. The question remains, is there a common link? Several people have been taken into custody for questioning in Bengal, in Maharashtra and in Gujarat. We will continue to track developments on the story very quickly, but I want to cut across to India Today's Rohit Singh joining us for more from Ground Zero. Rohit, do we have details? What triggered this violence in Nalanda? Any arrests so far? And were the police not deployed in adequate numbers to prevent this violence in the first place?
Well, see, this incident in Nalanda and Sasaram both have taken place despite Chief Minister Nitish Kumar issuing strict directions to the administration and the police that they should remain on high alert during the festival of Ram Navami. But despite that, we saw that violence was witnessed both in Sasaram and Nalanda, which happens to be the home district of the Chief Minister himself, and especially in Nalanda, where you see that there was utter chaos, and since morning there has been violence that has been reported. And what has triggered these incidents in both the places, Sasaram and Nalanda, are yet to be ascertained. But in both the cases, we saw that it's all linked to the Ram Navami Shobha Yatra. And when the Shobha Yatra was going on, there was some sort of a heated argument that took place between people of different community, and which led to pelting of stones on each other, later burning of houses, shops, and also the police had to resort to firing in the air. 2 people have also suffered bullet injuries, what we have told from reports. And in both places, Sasaram as well as Nalanda, Section 144 has been imposed to control the situation, but the tension is simmering in both these districts, especially in
Keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more, Rohit. For the moment, many thanks. But violence, arson, vandalism, stone pelting. From Gujarat to Maharashtra to Bengal and now Bihar, Ram Navami festivities have been targeted in multiple cities across our country. Though this isn't the first time, but there appears to be prima facie, and that's a matter of investigation, a systematic and coordinated attempt to target Ram Navami festivities and ensure that communal tensions flare up in different parts of the country. The question also remains, why were the police and intelligence agencies found wanting? Why could they not control and contain this violence and situation in time?
Gujarat, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. This year, Ram Navami was marred by violence, with communal clashes reported from more than 5 states. In Karnataka's Hassan, Hindus and Muslims clashed with each other. Gujarat's Vadodara witnessed massive clashes. Videos of stone pelting on Ram Navami processions had emerged earlier. A new video has now surfaced where a mob is seen pelting stones at a mosque. An eyewitness shared an account of what happened.
शोभा यात्रा की जब हुआ, जब मैं नमाज में थी, क्योंकि हमारे यहाँ कोई को पता नहीं था कि इन लोग ऐसी बवाल करेंगे, तो सब नमाज में, मस्जिद में नमाज में, बच्चे हमारे लड़के सब नमाज में थे और हम घर में नमाज पढ़ रहे थे। हमको पता होता था फरहान लड़के जाते नमाज में, नहीं जाते क्योंकि इन लोग बवाल करने के थे।
Gujarat Home Minister has vowed strict action.
ગુનેગારો પર પગલાં લેવામાં આવશે। રામનવમીની યાત્રામાં જે કોઈ લોકોએ પથ્થર નાખ્યા છે એ ભવિષ્યમાં ક્યારેય પથ્થર તરફ જોશે નહીં, એવા કડક પગલાં ભરવામાં આવશે।
Neighboring Maharashtra also saw communal flare-up in several locations. The government and the opposition blamed each other for the violence.
अभी सब अगर हम लोग सब कैमरे चेक करेंगे तो उसमें भी सामने आ जाएगी बात, ये दंगे कहाँ से शुरू है, किसने इसकी शुरुआत की, जानबूझकर कैसे एक मतलब सब व्हीकल जलाए जा रहे हैं, यहाँ पे तोड़ फोड़ हो रही है। मुझे लगता है सारी बातों की जांच होगी, लेकिन संजय राउत जी आप थोड़ा दिमाग ठंडा रखकर सोचिए। छत्रपति संभाजीनगर नाम रखने के बाद ये दंगे हो रहे हैं, ये उनका कहना बहुत गलत है। मुझे लगता है उनकी दिमागी हालत खराब हो गई है।
गवर्नमेंट स्पॉन्सर दंगा है, मुंबई में भी हो रहा है, मुंबई में भी करेंगे ये लोग अभी, क्योंकि डर गए हैं, इसलिए ये हिंदू मुसलमान करके ये फिर राजनीति करना चाहते हैं। लेकिन संभाजी नगर में रैली होगी, सभा होगी।
Violence during Ram Navami has become a common occurrence over the last couple of years. Then why were state governments not prepared for such eventualities? Bureau Report, India Today.
And a day after violence and arson was reported in Howrah during Ram Navami celebrations, the area witnessed another round of stone pelting on Friday. The police have made some arrests since yesterday. The ruling Trinamool Congress is accusing the Bharatiya Janata Party of provoking the violence. Leader of opposition in the state, Suvendu Adhikari of the Bharatiya Janata Party, has moved the Calcutta High Court demanding deployment of central forces, with the BJP saying that Mamata Banerjee's party is appeasing only the minorities and that's the reason for these clashes. India Today's Indrajit Kundu and Suryagni Roy are from Ground Zero with this report. Violence, arson and stone pelting. Ram Navami celebrations turned into a communal flashpoint in West Bengal's Howrah since Thursday. On Friday, there was still no end to this violence, with fresh stone pelting reported. The Mamata Banerjee government has deployed riot police to control the situation, but the police struggle at times to rein the rioters. Even the India Today crew was heckled by the mob.
There is a lot of anger amongst the locals in this area. There is a lot of anger amongst the locals in this area, and they are literally pouncing on the media. So as soon as they are seeing the cameras, they're pouncing on the media personnel who are present there.
Union Information and Broadcasting Minister Anurag Thakur targeted the Mamata Banerjee government, saying even journalists were being attacked in Bengal.
ममता जी के राज में जिस तरह से पत्रकारों पर हमले हुए, शोभा यात्रा रामनामी की निकालते हुए उन पर पथराव हुआ है, इससे ज़्यादा शर्मनाक और क्या होगा कि अगर पत्रकारों को भी हिंसा का शिकार होना पड़ता है, लहूलुहान होना पड़ता है और राज्य की सरकार मूक दर्शक बन के बैठी रहती है, आंखें बंद करके रखती है, तो उसकी जितनी निंदा की जाए उतनी कम है.
Amidst this violence, a political blame game has escalated between the ruling Trinamool Congress and the opposition BJP. The Trinamool Congress released videos claiming guns were brandished at the Ram Navami procession. The TMC claimed violence was perpetrated by BJP supporters from other states. The BJP, on the other hand, accused the TMC of provoking this violence.
এই ঘটনার জন্য দায়ী মমতা ব্যানার্জি এবং তার দল। তার তোষণের রাজনীতির আজকে পশ্চিম বাংলায় চরম জায়গায় গিয়ে পৌঁছেছে।
যে যারা বাংলার শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা সভ্যতা নষ্ট করার জন্য নির্লজ্জভাবে রাস্তায় নেমে গাড়িতে আগুন জ্বালিয়েছে, ইটপাটকেল ছুঁড়েছে, এলাকা অশান্ত করেছে, তাদের একটাকেও ছাড়া হবে না। আমাদের কাছে নির্দিষ্ট তিন চারটে ভিডিও আছে। আমি প্রথম ভিডিওটা, যেখানে কোমরে পিস্তল গুঁজে রামনবমীর মিছিল হচ্ছে, আপনারা দেখুন কাদের প্ররোচনায় হচ্ছে।
Section 144 has now been enforced in Howrah South area, but with violence continuing for 2 days, the Mamata Banerjee government has a huge challenge ahead. With Suryagni Roy and Indrajit Kundu in Howrah. Bureau Report, India Today. 14 days, 0 leads. The hunt for Khalistani sympathizer Amritpal Singh is turning out to be a national embarrassment. He's released at least 2 videos and an audio message while in hiding. He's also done a social media live. He's put out some other messages where he claimed he was running out of food and water. Despite this multi-state hunt, numerous CCTV footage, images, top agencies on his trail, the question remains, why is Amritpal Singh still successful in cocking a snook at India's police and agencies? Nearly 2 weeks of manhunt for Khalistani separatist Amritpal Singh is yet to yield any result. Punjab Police has nabbed Amritpal's key aide and driver Joga Singh, who had fled with Amritpal from Sonewal near Ludhiana. The two were accompanied by another close associate and Khalistani separatist Papalpreet, who's still absconding. All 3 were reportedly in Hoshiarpur recently. Sources close to the investigation say Amritpal had allegedly asked Joga to keep running with his mobile phone on to mislead the police. The police were reportedly tracking Joga's mobile phone to zero in on Amritpal's location. The police on Thursday used a drone over a village in Hoshiarpur as they searched for the elusive Amritpal. The security personnel in and around the village were also checking vehicles to try and find the radical preacher. Security has been tightened across Punjab ahead of Baisakhi, with door-to-door search operations on in the Hoshiarpur district.
वो पेश होना चाहता कहीं भी पूरे पंजाब में कहीं भी पेश होना चाहता है तो हो जाए। पुलिस लॉ के मुताबिक काम करेगी, लॉ के ऊपर कोई नहीं काम आज करता, उसको किसी डरने की जरूरत नहीं, आराम से पुलिस के साथ पेश हो जाए। तो हम पहले भी हमने उनके साथी जो पकड़े हुए हैं तो ठीक है, जो लॉ के मुताबिक कार्रवाई बंदी वही की है, तो इसको भी पेश हो जाना चाहिए।
जसदर साहब ने एक सद्दा दिता सी मीटिंग करके।
The separatist leader has released a new video on YouTube claiming he will soon appear in front of the world.
मैं जी अज बाहर है, सतगुर सच्चे पातशाह ने जी मैंने बाहर रखा है इस घेरे तो ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਅਰਥ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਥੀਆਂ ਲਈ, ਕੌਮ ਦੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੇ ਕੌਮ ਦੇ ਹਿੱਤਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੁਝ ਕਰ ਸਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਛੇਤੀ ਹੀ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਵਿਚਰਾਂਗੇ। ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ। ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਮੁਲਕ ਛੱਡ ਜਾ ਜੀ, ਮੁਲਕ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ, ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਦੇਊਗਾ, ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ।
Earlier, the police had recovered a toy drone near Amritpal's village located on the outskirts of Amritsar. The police have also released wanted posters seeking information that could lead to the arrest of Amritpal. Since the crackdown started on the 18th of March, Amritpal Singh has dodged the police at every turn. The Waris Punjab Day chief has been playing a game of hide and seek with the police since escaping from his hometown, Jallupur Kheda.
The big question is when Amritpal Singh will surrender before the Punjab Police. Is he going to surrender anytime at any of the 6 shrines, including the Darbar Sahib here at Amritsar? Meanwhile, the police has deployed various teams in and around these famous 6 shrines to nab Amritpal even before he enters these 6 shrines. With camera person Aman Gupta, this is Manjeet Sehgal in Amritsar for India Today.
Investigators believe that Amritpal Singh is trying to delay his surrender. Security has been stepped up around the Golden Temple in Amritsar. But the Akal Takht has made it clear Amritpal Singh will not be permitted to surrender at the Golden Temple or occupy it like Jarnail Singh Bhindrawale did once upon a time. The Shiromani Akali Dal Amritsar Member of Parliament Simranjit Singh Mann has actually gone a step ahead. He says Amritpal Singh should just cross over into Pakistan. But overall, Punjab appears to be on the brink once again. The question is Punjab walking into a crisis eyes wide shut?
On, Khalistani leader Amritpal Singh still untraceable. During this period, CCTV footage from 10 locations and 2 video messages from the fugitive himself had surfaced. The police haven't gotten any breakthrough so far, and their failure is emboldening the so-called Khalistani leader.
ਸਤਗੁਰ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਨੇ ਜੀ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਾਹਰ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਘੇਰੇ ਤੋਂ ਤੇ ਉਹਦਾ ਅਰਥ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਾਥੀਆਂ ਲਈ, ਕੌਮ ਦੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੇ ਕੌਮ ਦੇ ਹਿੱਤਾਂ ਲਈ ਕੁਝ ਕਰ ਸਕਾਂ ਤੇ ਛੇਤੀ ਹੀ ਸੰਸਾਰ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਹੋਵਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਸੰਗਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਵਿਚਰਾਂਗੇ, ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ। ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਹਿਣਗੇ ਮੁਲਕ ਛੱਡ ਜਾ ਜੀ, ਮੁਲਕ ਛੱਡ ਕੇ ਬਾਹਰ ਚਲਾ ਗਿਆ, ਉਹ ਹੁਣ ਬਾਹਰੋਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀਡੀਓ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਦੇਊਗਾ, ਇਦਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ।
What's more, Amritpal has been gaining support from a section of the political class. Lok Sabha MP and Shiromani Akali Dal Amritsar chief Simranjit Singh Mann has advised Amritpal to go to Pakistan.
ਆਪਾਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਗਏ 1984 ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ।
ਇਹ ਜਾਇਜ਼ ਹੈ? ਇਹ ਜਾਇਜ਼
ਬਿਲਕੁਲ। ਜਦੋਂ ਬੰਦਾ ਇਹ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਖਤਰੇ 'ਚ ਹੋਵੇ ਤੇ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹਾ ਜ਼ੁਲਮ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੋਵੇ, ਫਿਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਸਾਰਾ ਕੁਝ ਜਾਇਜ਼ ਹੈ।
Earlier, the Shiromani Akali Dal had pledged to provide legal assistance to the arrested Khalistani supporters, branding them as misguided youth. Even the Congress had sought a softer approach to the so-called youngsters arrested for backing the Khalistani leader.
ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਫੜਨਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੱਢਤਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਫੜਨੇ ਸੀ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇਨੋਸੈਂਟ ਲੋਕ ਹੈ, ਵਿਅਕਤੀ, ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਸਾਥੀ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਪਾਲ ਦੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਗਤੀਆਂ ਤੇ ਵਿਧੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਲ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਰਹੇ, ਮੈਂ ਸਮਝਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਇਨੋਸੈਂਟ ਲੋਕ ਹੈ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਨੂੰ ਕੋਈ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਜਿਹਨੇ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸੁਣਾਤੀਆਂ, ਜਿਹਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਸੁਣਾਤੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਚੜ ਪਏ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਨਿੰਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ।
The BJP has hit out, warning against a return to the days of separatism and militancy.
इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं कि हमारी पंजाब पुलिस देश की बेहतरीन पुलिस है, लेकिन कमी कहां रह गई है इस बात पर विचार करने की जरूरत है। कुछ लोग पंजाब को एक बार फिर 80 के दशक में ले जाना चाहते हैं। पंजाब में अलगाववादी सिर उठा रहे हैं।
In the backdrop of a prevailing law and order failure in the state, Chief Minister Bhagwant Man's family has come under Khalistani threat. Chief Minister Man's daughter Seerath Kaur Man, who lives in the United States, was allegedly abused by pro-Khalistani elements over the phone.
In USA, the daughter of the Chief Minister of Punjab is getting threats from the Khalistani elements. With each and every passing day, the situation here in Punjab is getting way more complicated as well as dangerous, and the question remains that where exactly is Amritpal and whether the Punjab Police and the Punjab government will be able to solve it in time. With camera person Shagun Bhardwaj, I'm Akshay Dongre, Find It Today.
Let me now take you across the border to Pakistan, a country in tailspin, or as many argue, in terminal decline. 11 people have been killed in a stampede for food in different cities from Karachi to Lahore to Peshawar in the past 2 days. In the holy month of Ramzan, Pakistanis, it seems, don't have enough for 2 square meals a day, and price of essential commodities are skyrocketing every day. To make matters worse, the political leadership in Pakistan is engaged in a bitter fight to the finish. A fight that some argue may end up finishing Pakistan. Long queue for atta across Pakistan, from Lahore to Peshawar and across multiple cities including Karachi. People are losing lives queuing up for free atta in the holy month of Ramzan. According to reports in Pakistan, 11 people, including 2 women, have lost their lives in stampede-like situations as government trucks roll in with flour. Even grown men have been reduced to tears. The Shahbaz Sharif government is being accused of massive mismanagement of the food crisis in Pakistan, especially in the holy month of Ramzan.
जो मर्जी मेरे साथ कर ले, मुझे उठवा दे, मुझे मरवा दे, जो मर्जी कर ले, मैं ऐसे निजाम पर, ऐसे हुक्मरानों पर मैं लानत भेजता हूँ जो हमारी माओ को, हमारी बहनों को, हमारी बेटियों को।
आज का दिन मैं 2 खवातीन के नाम करना चाहता हूँ। वो दोनों फ्री आटा लेने की लाइन में लगी हैं, दोनों एक उनसे मारी गई है, एक हॉस्पिटल में है, आधा जिस्म उसका भी खत्म हो चुका है, बेचारी पिस पिस के कदमों में आके आटा बन चुकी है।
Prices are skyrocketing. The Sharif government is in dire straits, with Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves falling to barely $4 billion in the week ending March 24. And the government has been extremely reluctant to clear thousands of containers stuck at ports in Pakistan. There is anger at the collapse of business and industry across Pakistan. To make matters worse, there is a no-holds-barred war between Pakistan Muslim League leader Maryam Nawaz and former Prime Minister Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party.
कि क्या हम अंदाज़ा लगा रहे हैं कि जिस तरह की 11 महीने में तबाही मची है इस मुल्क के अंदर, यानी जिस तरह की महंगाई आई है इस मुल्क में, पाकिस्तान की तारीख में कभी ऐसी महंगाई नहीं आई।
IMF के आगे इमरान खान को बिठाना चाहिए था और बताना चाहिए था इमरान खान को, कौम को, कि ये जो मैं कौम को महंगाई की दलदल में फंसा कर जा रहा हूं और खुद जाके ज़मान पाक के बंकर में छुप के बैठ के आवाम का तमाशा देख रहा हूं, जरा बताओ आकर कि जंगल में आग लगाने वाले को कटहरे में खड़ा करना चाहिए या आग बुझाने वाले को।
Pakistan's Information Minister Maryam Aurangzeb upped the ante, calling Imran Khan an arsonist and an anarchist out to set Pakistan on fire.
पुलिस के सर तोड़े गए, पेट्रोल बम्स फेंके गए, रेंजर और पुलिस की गाड़ियों पे पेट्रोल बम फेंके गए। ये बंदा इलेक्शन नहीं चाहता मुल्क में। ये मुल्क में लाशें चाहता है, फसाद चाहता है। अगर ये इलेक्शन चाहता होता तो ये इस्तीफा क्यों देता, ये असेंबलियां क्यों तोड़ता? ये मुल्क में अफरा तफरी चाहता है, मुल्क में अनारकी चाहता है।
There are divisions not just in the judiciary but also now in the army and the civil society in Pakistan. Amidst the political, economic and security crisis in Pakistan, for the common people of the country, there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Bureau Report, India Today. We will continue to track developments on the other side of the hill in Pakistan very closely. But that is all I have for you on India First this evening. Many thanks for watching. A quick break. Business Today up next with Udayan Mukherjee. Stay with us.
तो पहले अब उनकी माफी होगी या पहले जेपीसी बैठेगी?
अरे ऐसा है सुधीर भाई, इसकी चर्चा स्पीकर की उपस्थिति में करनी चाहिए, दोनों दलों ने मिलकर। चले मैं तो आज ही कह देता हूं कि स्पीकर साहब के पास जाकर चर्चा करिए, आपके कार्यक्रम के माध्यम से ही कह देता हूं।
The battle for Karnataka has begun. The stage set for 2023's biggest election. Brace for a star-studded campaign with all the big guns. But none bigger than Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has already logged over a dozen days in the state since January. But if there's one man who isn't impressed, it's Karnataka's challenger number one.
Even Narendra Modi ji comes 100 times, it will not help the BJP.
Providing counterfire is Karnataka's other warhorse from the ruling camp. I ask Congress, who is your leader? Can Rahul Gandhi equalize Prime Minister Narendra Modi? Congress leaders are daydreaming of becoming Chief Minister. They won't win more than 60 to 70 seats. The two aging superstars of Karnataka politics have both signalled this could be their final poll, but they aren't dropping their weapons yet.
There is a strong anti-incumbency against BJP government. Corruption is rampant. Never in the history of Karnataka so much of corruption was there in previously. So this government is a most corrupt government.
While the Congress is front-footing the election like a powerful regional party, the BJP will be scaling up its dependence on Modi magic. When Prime Minister came to Shivamogga, 2 lakh people went back because there was no space. I'm sure BJP will form the government with a thumping majority. Rahul Gandhi kicks off his Karnataka war on April the 5th, while Modi and his team are yet to reveal their rally battle plan. Expect Karnataka 2023 to completely overwhelm 2018 in terms of star power. With Nagarjun Dwarkanath and Nabila Jamal in Bengaluru, Bureau Report, India Today.
Hello and welcome to the Business Today show. I'm Udayan Mukherjee. My guest on the show today is a professor of corporate finance of impeccable reputation. But the distinction is that he's also very closely tracked by members of the financial fraternity, because his core work, the work that he is very reputed for, is in the field of equity valuation, so much so that he's often referred to as the Dean of Valuation. And with so much going on in the world of corporate finance, particularly in global banking, it's a wonderful time to be able to welcome on the show Professor Ashwath Damodaran of the Stern School of Business at NYU. Ashwath, wonderful to have you on the show, and thank you very much for joining me today.
I'm delighted to be on. I don't know about the impeccable and the dean part, but I'm glad to be on anyway.
Thank you. This is such a strange time to be talking to you, because, first it started off with Silicon Valley Bank, then Signature, and then Credit Suisse. And just when we thought it couldn't get even bigger than Credit Suisse, there are murmurs over the weekend about Deutsche Bank. Where is this script finally going to end, you think? What is the end game?
The problem with when you have a banking crisis is banks are built on trust. When I talk about banks, I think of them as the exact opposite of what you talk about when you talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin I've described as a currency for the paranoid, by the paranoid, and essentially built on no trust at all. Banks at the other extreme are built entirely on trust. As an example, if we all decided to withdraw money from JP Morgan Chase, the largest bank in the world today, tomorrow there would be no bank left. So banks, because of that, it's very difficult to figure out where the trust comes back. So you can almost see the game play out. You get a weak bank, it gets knocked over, and the next target gets lined up almost immediately. So I think it will end. Let's hope it ends, because otherwise the end result is catastrophe. It will end, but it'll end in a time when, it's almost unpredictable when it ends. But it is going to play itself out, and eventually trust will come back, but there's going to be a lot of pain along the way.
Will there be a serious accident, Ashwath, you think, by the time this ends? Or because the regulators know what the collapse of a single institution can do to the system, having seen it in 2008, they will do whatever it takes, throw whatever money it takes to prevent that from happening?
See, they can do that with a single institution. They can't do it with institutions collectively. The reality is the regulators put together do not have the resources to stop a complete bank run. And that's what I meant about this being unpredictable. If, in fact, the regulators were in control of the process, you could rest easier, but they're not. They have only partial control. They can do what they can to try to change the game. But the game here is to bring trust back. And that's no amount of money brings that back instantaneously. And unfortunately, I think we have a trust deficit. We've had a trust deficit for a decade or more. And I trace it back to 2008. I described 2008 as the year we lost trust. We lost trust in governments, we lost trust in regulators, we lost trust in banks, and that trust has never quite come back. So I think we're starting with a trust deficit to begin with. And with social media playing out the way it is, it becomes a lot more difficult to stop rumors from spreading and trust to come back.
That's exactly the point, because the trust deficit that you allude to, over the weekend there's talk about Deutsche Bank. Now, we don't know whether Deutsche Bank is in a precarious position or not. They're saying they're not. But what's to stop people from going online and withdrawing their deposits anyway because of the rumors which are swirling around? Do you think that could actually lead to far greater damage than is warranted today in the banking space?
You can get into a debt spiral very quickly. I remember in November of 2008, when there was a very real chance that nothing would be left standing, when a rumor started that Morgan Stanley would not be around in a couple of weeks. And the rumor itself created enough trouble that Morgan Stanley actually was in trouble. So the perception that you're in trouble can actually create trouble. So at some point, there's got to be a point where trust comes back enough that people leave their money. So I think that's what the regulators and the governments are looking for, is some kind of a signal that this is not going to be an end run where everybody's got to take their money out. Because you got to put your money somewhere. You can't leave it as cash under your mattress. So the money has to find its way somewhere. And that's going to be the question, is whether they can, and I'm not sure whether Deutsche will be left standing 2 weeks from now. My guess is it will, but let's see how it plays out.
I also read somewhere that the prudential norms in banking in the US are actually not making things easier, because apparently the bond losses of all the banks put together is very, very close to all the contingency reserves of the US banking system put together. Could that be even right?
I think what you're talking about is the fact that many of these banks hold long-term government bonds, which they bought in 2019, 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
And that's not just banks. Governments have significant holdings of U.S. treasuries. There's a markdown of about 18 to 20% because rates have risen. But that's neither here nor there. It's not. None of these banks need to sell those bonds to cash out right now to cover deposits. That's why I said it's a trust. It's a trust deficit. It's a deposit. If nobody had withdrawn money from Silicon Valley Bank, we wouldn't be talking about SVB right now as a bank that's shut down. So I think that the fact that there's $620 billion in potential losses waiting on the banks is neither here nor there. I mean, what made Silicon Valley Bank so unusual was that 60% of its assets were in treasury bonds and mortgage-backed securities. It was more hedge fund than bank. If, in contrast, if you look at a typical bank in the US, it's more like 20 to 25%. A typical bank in Europe, which also faces the same issue. Any market where rates have gone up, you're going to face this issue, has about 12 to 15%. So the magnitude of the bond holdings are much smaller at other banks. The worry you have, though, is if this banking crisis becomes a recession and the loans that these banks have start to fail, then you have a real problem on banks' hands, and that is a problem we don't want to face. And that's what the next step in this process is, to make sure this banking crisis doesn't become an economic crisis.
This is an interesting point because that's the central issue today, Ashwath, where a lot of people, economic historians included, have been suggesting that these bank failures typically happen just before an economy goes into, or at least the US economy goes into recession. Do you see that as a prelude or a harbinger of a recession to come?
There's been talk of a recession well before the bank failures, right? I've heard more talk of a recession in the last year than I've had in my entire 40 plus years in markets. So the amazing thing is, in spite of all of this talk of a recession, the economy has been remarkably resilient. Let's see if it's resilient enough to bounce back from this. But my guess is it adds one more chip against, the economy continuing to stay strong. You are going to see a weakness in the economy. Weakness by itself is not the issue. It's how deep the recession is and how much it might lead to losses on those loans that banks have on their portfolios. So I'm not quite ready to write the obituary of the U.S. economy yet. I think it is not a good sign if you think about what will the economy do over the next year. But it's not a fatalistic sign either.
Well, whatever's happening with deposits in the banks is one issue. The other is what's happening with stock prices of banks at large. I mean, since you track financial markets closely, do you think, if you were an investor, you would walk in and buy some of these banks today, or do you think there's far more damage to unfold?
Well, if you think that banking is still a service you will need 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, which I think is absolutely the case, I think there are going to be winners and losers. This can't be all losers for all banks. So at the end of this, there are going to be banks left standing, and they're going to potentially be more valuable because they have larger market shares. For the moment, though, it looks like big banks are won at the expense of smaller banks. Money center banks are winning at the expense of regional banks. And because of the too big to fail, I think there is more deposit money flowing to bigger banks from smaller banks. So in the near term, the threat is to smaller regional banks, which might not be able to stand on their own. So my guess is you're also going to see a lot of consolidation in the bank business going forward, because it becomes increasingly non-viable to be a small bank with a clientele in a sector like Silicon Valley Bank. All of its clientele was in the Silicon Valley, the ecosystem, VCs, founders, startups. I think increasingly that type of bank is going to be under threat. So I wouldn't be surprised if coming out of this, we ended up in a banking business that's dominated by 7 or 8 big players, rather than the hundreds and hundreds of small banks that you see out there. And there is a loss to the economic system when you have smaller banks leave the system. Because when larger banks dominate, you have much more power in the hands of those banks in terms of setting rates. So let's see how this plays out. But I have a feeling that one of the things that is going to come out of this is a consolidation in the banking business.
Now, a lot of people have rushed to say that don't panic, this is not 2008. This is nowhere close to 2008. But you know, for people who've watched markets for a long time, they know that every crisis is different. I mean, it does not exactly mirror the previous crisis. So should we take comfort from the fact that regulators are aware of the problems of the nature of the previous crisis, and therefore we will not land up in the kind of mess that we did in 2008? Or could this crisis actually play a little differently, but be no less damaging in a sense?
I think both statements can be true. You can take some comfort out of the fact that regulators have lived through something like this before and have the ammunition to deal with it. At the same time, you know that in every crisis, regulators say, don't worry, this is not the crisis, everything's going to be okay. So I think we need to be on high caution. And my suggestion is, you know, turn off CNBC, don't be so closely tracking markets every day, because in a sense, there's nothing you can do to stop a banking crisis. Just take care of your own finances the best you can. And that might mean putting safety first, at least in the near term, if you're an investor who cares about protecting the principal in your portfolio.
How do you see the Fed moving right now? Because, you know, they were on course keeping inflation as their central target. I'm not saying they have abandoned it, but given the noise in the banking space, has their job become much more complicated in a sense? Could they now begin to think that their primary problem or the primary issue is to resolve the banking system and to get trust back into that system rather than fight the fire of inflation?
It really has made their job much more complicated, because in the near term, you've got to stop the banking crisis. Because if there is a banking crisis, victories against inflation are going to be hollow, because I mean, what are you fighting for? The entire economy is being taken down by banks in trouble. So I think for the near term, I'm sure there's as much focus on the banking crisis as there is on inflation. But the Fed can't let inflation kind of not be taken care of, because if inflation keeps climbing, part of the reason banks are in trouble is because of inflation. I know people have said, well, banks are in trouble because the Fed has raised interest rates. The Fed did not raise interest rates. Inflation raised interest rates. The Fed chased interest rates up in the market. Inflation is at the source of the banking crisis. So these are not two separate problems. Inflation gave rise to the banking problem. And I think the Fed knows that. It knows that it needs to fix the banking problem, but it knows that there's a bigger source problem, which is inflation, and they need to take care of that as well.
Now, is this an American problem, Ashwath, primarily? Because, you know, over the last few days, there have been lots of ripples and tremors across Europe as well. In India, most of the regulators have said so far that our system is different, our safeguards are different, and India is not in the same boat. Do you therefore see it as in a sense, a localized American problem, or does it have global ramifications?
It's less to do with geography than with parts of the world where interest rates have risen a lot. That's true in Europe and in the US. If you look at interest rates, the T-bond rate at the start of 2022 is 1.5%. At the end of 2022, it was 4%. In Europe, at the start of 2022, the Euro 10-year bond rate was close to 0%. By the end of 2022, it was at 2.5%. Any market where rates have gone up significantly is a market with a banking problem. And it's not just a banking problem. It's a problem with a lot of companies that have essentially mismatched durations, which companies do all the time. But these are the times when that mismatching comes back to haunt you. What saved Asia is not because the regulators are somehow more forward-looking and banks are more secure. It's because rates in India have not risen the way they have in the rest of the world. And that's true for a lot of Asia. So I think what separates the parts of the world that are not seeing a banking problem from the parts of the world that are seeing a banking problem is looking at what rates in that part of the world have done. And that's going to give you the answer.
Time for a quick break on the show, but we shall return on the Business Today show with Professor Ashwath Damodaran of the Stern School of Business, NYU.
Allu Arjun, who made a mark among the Hindi audiences with his impressive performance in Pushpa. And Prabhas, who broke into the big league with Bahubali in 2015 and retained the stature with its sequel in 2017. After India Today magazine released issue on July 15th featuring Pushpa star Allu Arjun, the cover titled South Swag, Prabhas fans dug up a 2017 India Today magazine cover titled Epic Blockbuster featuring the superstar, took snap of the same and while drawing comparison, called it more organic. Allu fans who were raving about the viral July issue cover were met with rebuttal from fans of superstar and Bahubali actor Prabhas. Meanwhile, his team claimed that Prabhas's PR team is deliberately reviving the older magazine issue as Allu's cover gains traction. For the unversed, both Prabhas and Allu Arjun created a respectable space for themselves in Indian cinema through their work.
Middle class.
Before Pushpa The Rise, Allu Arjun delivered a commercial hit, Ala Vaikuntapuram Allu. He's also gearing up for the sequel, Pushpa The Rule.
The great Vikramaditya.
Prabhas, on the other hand, was last seen in Radhe Shyam, which turned out to be a box office dud, and is all set to star in Salar, Adi Purush and Project K. Entertainment Bureau, India Today.
Welcome back. You're watching the Business Today show. I've been in conversation with Professor Ashwath Damodaran on the state of the global banking crisis and what kind of turmoil lies ahead. Speaking of the Indian banking system, I recently read one of your recent interviews where you spoke about the fact that the Adani Group had exposed the weakest links of the Indian financial system. But I don't know whether they were alluding to specific banks or insurance companies, but what were you trying to say?
I think this is no secret that if you go back in time, Indian banking and Indian family group companies have been linked at the hip, which is you loan to a family group and you don't do the due diligence that you would have done with an individual company, and not because you're corrupt, but because you assume the family